just grabbed the girl's hands and we were running, and there's a body and another body and another body.
This is a crazed lunatic full of hate.
It was an act of pure evil.
All right, here we are at Fox News Alert, the latest on the mass murder on the Strip. We have so many questions still that need to be answered. 59 now confirmed dead, and 527 are hurt in area hospitals following the worst shooting in modern American history.
Police are now trying to figure out what led a lone gunman to open fire on a crowd of innocent concert goers from inside a luxury hotel in Las Vegas, surrounded by 23 guns and thousands of rounds of ammo.
We are now learning more about the victims and the American heroes who risked their own lives to save others.
You just fight or flight, and there's so many people around you that are, I mean, they were all dropping.
Retired firefighter, he came over to us. He could see we were all huddled around my mom. He said, if you want to live, you need to get out of here right now. And we refused. We said we weren't going to leave our mom. And he said, you will die if you stay here. He goes, I will stay here. I'm trained for this. I will stay here with your mother.
Thoughts and prayers. Wow, that's amazing. Thoughts and prayers are now pouring in from around the world. For example,
in Paris, the Eiffel Tower going dark last night, and in Tel Aviv, City Hall lighting up in red, white, and blue in solidarity with the United States of America.
Meanwhile, Steve's in Las Vegas, standing right outside the hotel where the shooter called home for 3 days prior to the outrageous act that killed so many and hurt so many more. Steve, as you look around, I still see flashing lights. Is that just to keep people away from the tape?
It's still a crime scene, Brian. Remember, it happened right back there. There's the Mandalay Bay, and between me and the Mandalay Bay, that's the area where the concert was, and that is where 22,000 people were. And remember, in the very beginning, they couldn't figure out, is the shooter on the ground? And that's what they thought. And that's why the Las Vegas police who were responding were running toward the Mandalay Bay. One guy just had a revolver out. He didn't realize there was a guy up on the 32nd floor with all those high-powered rifles. What's interesting is I was talking to some entertainers about, when you're up on stage, do you ever think about that happening? And I was talking to one of the biggest stars in show business yesterday, and they told me they think about it all the time. And he said, if you don't use my name, I will tell you a secret. And the secret is, every time I go up on stage, I have a gun on me.
Wow.
Wow, and the thing is too, you have a situation where, Ariana Grande had a situation where her concert comes to a close, and then that happens. Then you have what happened yesterday, where people sit out in front, and you have to wonder at major events, if you're a parent, not saying don't go, but you might want to make a call to Madison Square Garden, to your local Coliseum, and say, wait a second, what kind of security do you have there? On the perimeters, for example, right. That was enough. But then they had to push it back now after what happened in Manchester.
You know what's sad?
And now this in an open-air concert is going to have people rethink it.
You know what's sad? Yeah, we all rethink how we live our lives because of this one guy now. Now we're going to think differently when we go to a concert. You have these crazy lunatics that did that on 9/11 to all of us here in America. Now going through security at an airport, it delays all of us. Everything changes because of these nut jobs, these evil individuals. And it really just makes us all furious. But unfortunately, that's just the way it is now, Steve.
Sure, absolutely. But here's the thing. And I've been talking to some Las Vegas police who've been training for years, when they handle a big crowd like the one they had right back there a couple of days ago with 25,000 people. They train for everything. They never trained for that before because they never thought about somebody, if a window opens, then they train for that. It's like around the White House. The Secret Service knows exactly what windows open surrounding the White House. And they got to, if the president's traveling somewhere, they got to worry about that. But if the windows don't open, they're not as worried about that building. Now, with this guy back there who had some sort of a hammer device to crack open 2 panes of glass, now they're thinking, well, maybe they could do that with windows that don't open. So maybe we do have to do it. But then again, that would mean you would have to secure every building in America.
No balconies either on that hotel. Meanwhile, 4 minutes after the top of the hour.
Meanwhile, Adam Housley is following the latest on this investigation. He is on the Vegas Strip. He's near the shooting scene. Adam, you know more about who this guy was.
Yeah, Ainsley, you know, we also want to talk about what Steve referred to. There's still an ongoing active crime scene here, and you're still seeing ambulances leave, and each time an ambulance leaves, obviously with no lights and sirens, it's taking a body away. So just one thing to keep in mind, we're over 30 hours from this shooting, and there's still families that don't know officially that their loved ones have been either seriously injured or killed here. We're also getting an idea from eyewitnesses, which we've heard from as well, about that concert, about basically the wide open view that this man had. Take a listen to one eyewitness about what it was like when basically she says she had no place to go.
I was scared the whole time because the shooting never stopped. I mean, it stopped for like seconds, and then it would start shooting again, and you're out in the open in the middle of the field. Like, there's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to hide. There's tables, but I mean, gunshots clearly can go through a table.
Gunshots clearly went through a lot of things. People were under the stage and inside beer trucks as well. This is a map of the actual area. It gives you an idea of where we are. If you've flown into Las Vegas, basically at the end of the runways, the Mandalay Bay Hotel kind of shows you across the street the vacant lot where the concert area was located. Now, 1 year prior, almost exactly to the day, a viewer had been here, someone I became friends with, had been here for the exact same concert, and because they enjoyed how cool their suite was, he took his phone out, like a lot of us would do, and videotaped a walk inside that room on the 32nd floor that 1 year later would be the room that this gunman used. And you can see as you walk in, it's a 2-room suite. It's not 2 separate rooms, and you can see the views, guys. I mean, clearly unobstructed from 2 different angles, right down on those 22,000 people that were enjoying a concert, only to be interrupted by gunfire and this madman. Back to you guys.
Yeah, such a fascinating point of view. And what are the chances of someone renting the exact same suite? Adam, great job lassoing that. Meanwhile, just the question I get with no matter where I go is, as horrific as it is, people just can't get their head around who this person is, why he would do it. An extreme gambler? Did he actually lose everything? One of the networks reported that he had a big transaction. They can't figure out if he got a big win or a big loss leading up to the attack 48 hours ago.
Well, Steve, his brother was interviewed yesterday and said that he seemed normal. His brother said that about him. Said he was a millionaire, had a lot of real estate investments, had 2 planes and several properties, and he loved gambling.
Yeah, and in fact, apparently he was at the Mandalay Bay and won some money before he did the shooting, so it's not like that's going to be a big problem. The other thing about him is he simply did not fit the profile of a mass murderer. About twice as old. Usually when somebody decides, you know, I'm going to go out and I'm going to kill as many people as I can, they do it right then. They don't check in on a Thursday. They don't sit around in a hotel for 3 days and just wait.
The concert, right?
It's completely different.
Yeah. And they had some explosive material in his apartment, in his house, same explosive material that they used with the Oklahoma bomber used. So this guy was just armed to the teeth.
Nitrate.
Well, with everything possible. Meanwhile, at 8 minutes after the hour, let's talk about how the White House handled it. They're staying out of politics to their immense credit, and that's really what Bill Clinton did after the Oklahoma bombing, obviously what George Bush did after 9/11. Here's the Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders and the President.
I want to thank the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department and all of the first responders for their courageous efforts and for helping to save the lives of so many. The speed with which they acted is miraculous and prevented further loss of life.
Sadly, multiple police officers, both on duty and off duty, were among those killed or injured. The Gospel of John reminds us that there is no greater love than to lay down one's life for a friend. The American spirit cannot and will not ever be broken. We will come together, united as one nation.
We pray for the entire nation to find unity and peace, and we pray for the day when evil is banished and the innocent are safe from hatred and from fear. May God bless the souls of the lives that are lost. May God give us the grace of healing, and may God provide the grieving families with strength to carry on. Thank you. God bless America.
And the president will be there, and he'll be there after going to Puerto Rico today. He's going to be by you tomorrow, Steve, in Las Vegas.
Yeah, and Stevie ordered...
Absolutely, and of course he's going to be thanking all the first responders.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, the first responders who were back in that field, they weren't just people who wore a uniform. There were a lot of first responders who were just ordinary people. They had traveled to the event with friends, and then suddenly they were the first responder, because if they didn't pull their friend to safety or pick up somebody who'd been shot, they'd just be out in that field, could have bled to death. But there were so many guardian angels out there in that field this 36 hours ago. I mean, how many people are alive today because they were able to get to the hospital within that hour, rather than waiting for the police to neutralize that guy with the gun on the 32nd floor.
Yeah, you make a good point. You know, right before, an hour before, right behind where you're standing, Steve, when this masked gunman, when this gunman just did that to so many different people. An hour before, Big and Rich, they were on stage, and you know them, they're friends of our show. We interviewed them just a week ago, 2 weeks ago. They were on the stage, and they were leading a sing-along of God Bless America. The crowd went crazy. They all held up their cell phones to the lights. You could see all of the lights, and they were singing back those very words. Listen to this. Brian, last night, Laura Ingraham said that is a gift. That video is a gift to all of us Americans, and I'm sure to the families that lost their loved ones there, knowing they were crying out to God to bless this country just before they went home to meet him.
Right, and you know, Ainsley, one of the things that is so poignant about those images where everybody is singing is to know that an hour later, 59 of those people would be dead, and 500 of them were wounded. How many dozens are still in the hospital right now?
Meanwhile, John Rich was on last night with Sean Hannity and talked about that moment, and also where he was when this whole thing happened.
Every show that we do, and this has been now for over 1,000 concerts in a row, Big Kenny and I like to invite up active duty and veterans and sometimes first responders as well. And then we always lead the entire crowd in God Bless America. So last night we continued that tradition and did it again. And Sean, you look out there and there's 22,000 people. There were people there from all over the United States and North America singing God Bless America at the top of their lungs with their phones held high with the lights on, celebrating freedom and the ability to live as Americans and sing together in unity.
He was actually at his bar right afterwards when Jason Aldean was actually on stage, and he came back and talked about that. All right. Meanwhile, Steve, stay right there. At 13 minutes after the hour, we move ahead. The man who killed 59 people on the Vegas Strip stockpiled an arsenal of weapons in the hotel and at his house. But don't call him crazy. Rob O'Neill, the man who killed Osama bin Laden, joins us next.
And we are getting our first look at the victims. Many of them turned hero in their last moments. Look how young most of them are. The incredible stories of bravery. Straight ahead.
A gentleman that was shot, and he said, "Can you help me?" And so I put him in my car, and I had like 6 people in my car, people with shoes, running just to get away.
We have new details about the shooter in the hotel room. He turned into an elaborate kill center. Thousands of bullets stockpiled in bags, at least 23 guns and platforms that were set up by the windows to view down on his victims, 32 stories below. What does this arsenal tell all of us? Well, here to weigh in is former Navy SEAL, Fox News contributor, and the author of that book right there called The Operator, The Man Who Killed bin Laden, Rob O'Neill. Rob, thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Ainsley.
What do you know about, when you hear this story and you hear about all of his weapons, 23 semi-automatic guns that he has made into automatic weapons, what does that tell you?
Well, just based on where he was, the position of the suite, the height, how there were 2 different angles in a 2-bedroom suite, knowing that he could get different firing positions and he could maneuver if he needed to. The weapons that he brought there, the fact that he had either automatic weapons or semi-automatic weapons converted to automatic weapons, and bipods for stable shooting positions with, I've heard, long guns with scopes. So initially he knows he can get the shooting started. He can move when he has the He knows there's a little bit of security to get into the area where the concert goers are, and once he starts shooting, it's going to be tough for them to get out. And with two different angles, moving by himself, he can keep them in what we would call like a kill box. Or a fatal funnel.
How easy is it to convert these guns?
Well, for anyone that knows how to do it, it's simple. You can either convert the guns messing with certain parts of the weapon, the interior, 4 to 6 minutes, doing a couple modifications. There's stuff that I'm not going to get into that's available out there.
Like devices that do
devices
this
you can
for
use on the stock and the trigger where technically it's not an automatic weapon because the definition of automatic is, one trigger pull and every round will go out as long as you keep it depressed. But there are modifications where it sort of does it for you when your fingers.
Well, can those devices be illegal? Do they have to sell those?
It's illegal. It's illegal to use them, and it's illegal. I don't think it's illegal to buy them, but you can't use them and modify them, which doesn't make a lot of sense because there's so many loopholes. Because for some reason, there's a lot of people out there that really think they need automatic weapons. I disagree with that. I don't think there's anything wrong with a semi-automatic weapon like an AR-15. People do use to hunt for home defense, but when you start getting into automatic weapons and like AK-47s that apparently had there, there's not a need for that. I don't think out there. And this
what
is
about
a very
the
dangerous
platforms,
spot.
Rob? Because what disturbs me is knowing this guy broke out 2 windows and he's running back and forth to get different
And you can't really
angles.
tell on a lot of the camera angles, but they're two different positions. So he's shooting at like 45-degree angles at two different sides. So when people think they're safe from cover on one, he's simply running to another room in a suite and engaging them from there.
Sick.
And this guy thought about this, and it just begs the question. This is maybe how you profile a guy goes into a room and he has 10 different suitcases at 10 different times. I mean, it's not unusual for him to stay long periods, but what's going on with the suitcases? Do you need that much stuff? So it begs that question.
Unbelievable. I heard a psychiatrist earlier say he's so narcissistic that he thought he was the creme de la creme and couldn't get his head around the fact that someone else might get a job or something ahead of him, and so he wants to instill violence on other people. It's beyond.
He's
It's sick.
definitely crazy.
Thank you, Rob. Thanks
Absolutely.
for serving our country. The fight over gun control has already begun, but is that really what the people of Las Vegas need right now? Bob Massey has lived there for 40 years, and he joins us live next.
All right, back to the latest out of Las Vegas in a moment, but first, some other headlines making news today, and there's a reason why we're playing that song. Legendary rocker Tom Petty has died. He passed away in the hospital late last night after suffering a heart attack at his home in California. He was just 66 years old. And the NFL holding a moment of silence for the Las Vegas shooting victims ahead of Monday Night Football. Everybody stood for that, but moments later, 2 Kansas City Chiefs took a seat for the national anthem. Everyone on the Washington Redskins stood tall. Meanwhile, 24 minutes after the hour, Steve, you have the latest over in Las Vegas.
I do, Brian. That's right. America right now in mourning, shock, and grief as Las Vegas reels from the deadliest mass shooting in American history. But that's not stopping Democrats from pushing gun control. Hillary Clinton tweeting, quote, "Imagine the deaths if the shooter had a silencer, which the NRA wants to make easier to get. Our grief isn't enough. We can and must put politics aside, stand up to the NRA, and work together to try to stop this from happening again." But is now the right time for politics? Fox News legal analyst Bob Massey, who has lived here for 40 years, joins us live on the Strip right now. Morning, Steve. What do you think of Mrs. Clinton talking about the NRA?
Well, I mean, I just think she's trying to be relevant in a situation that she shouldn't be relevant in at all. But surely those of us who live here, that's the last thing we want to hear about is politics, the NRA, gun control, and things like that.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, and ultimately, there will be a conversation about gun control. But what gun control law could have stopped a guy from stockpiling all those guns up there, knocking out a window, and then shooting people?
Bad people can get guns anytime they want. I mean, anybody could get guns if they want to. It's just as simple as that.
Not only that, but if he hadn't used a gun, apparently they found in his car ammonium nitrate.
Yeah.
All you need is some fuel oil, and you got an Oklahoma City bomb.
As premeditated as anything I've seen.
All right. You've lived here for 40 years. Yeah. Before we just got started, you were talking about how right over here at the Most Holy Redeemer Shrine and at churches all around Las Vegas, there were special unity services last night at 7 o'clock to pull the town together.
Yeah, such a moving evening. Mass at St. Francis of Assisi, where I went, and other churches all over town. City Hall had a prayer vigil last night. I mean, the town really came together, and very needed, because I was telling you before that I sort of drove around yesterday, went to a couple casinos just to get a sense. I mean, it's so somber, you know, and just quiet, and you could just sense the feeling of the loss that everybody feels, and disbelief, because I have to tell you, it really hasn't settled in yet for us. You know, you're still at that point of trying to figure out how something like this could even happen, so it's still settling in.
But people were on the floors of the casino. They were still putting the money in the slot machine.
They're engaging.
They were going through the motions, but
they were engaging. And I think the other thing, because it's such a tourist town, people that come here to relax and then they experience this, it's just 180 degrees from the reason why they came here, you know.
Yesterday, 24 hours ago, you were on the show when I was in New York, and you were telling us a story about how you heard about what happened right back here through your son.
My youngest son called me and said, Dad, turn on a television set, and a good friend of ours, my oldest son's couple, was here with 3 other couples. And ultimately, they made it out, made it home safe.
Right.
But when I listened to what they said and how it experienced, it was crazy. Then I learned later, when I went to work, one young girl works for me. She's only 20 years old, Maritza. She actually was here also. I didn't know. Goodness. She left 15 minutes before because she was tired and she had to come to work. And her mother called her up and said, "Where are you? Where are you?" I said, "I'm home. I just got home. I left early." And she said, "Turn on the television set." So God was watching over her.
Well, I know the city is in shock, but the city is pulling together. Bob and I were just talking about how there's a GoFundMe page nationwide where I think we're up to about $3 million. But you were talking about fundraising, and Zappos, the shoe folks, stepped into it.
Zappos says whatever's raised. Last night at about 7 o'clock, before that, about $2 million was raised. Zappos said they will match whatever's going to be raised.
Right.
These big companies have stepped up because they love Las Vegas. They know what it means. And a very misunderstood city. You know, it's like you get up and go to work, we get up and go to work. Right. You know, this is another part of what we do. Casinos are an important part, but it's like every place else. There's families, there's kids that play every day and go to school.
Let's end where we started, and that was with the Hillary Clinton tweet about the NRA. What's your message as somebody who has lived in Las Vegas 40 years for politicians who want to politicize this just 36 hours after it happened?
They need to stay away from it. They need to understand what we're going through, and that this is not the venue, this is not the platform to use this. We understand it's a tragedy, and it's the worst massacre in the United States that we've had. It's not the time to do it.
It is not. All right.
Steve, it's good to see you. I'm sorry it's on these terms, buddy.
Yeah, no kidding. All right.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Meanwhile, right now, police working to learn more about the Las Vegas shooter who was in that hotel right behind me. So what did they find inside his house? Jillian is live in Mesquite, coming up next. And we're getting our first look at the faces of the victims, many of them using their last moments to save somebody else. The incredible stories of bravery. Straight ahead. We are back with a Fox News alert. It is 4:32 here in Las Vegas right now. Authorities digging through the shooter's home as they search for a motive, and that intensifies.
You're now learning more about his family's criminal past.
Jillian Milley picks up the coverage. She's live outside one of the killer's home in Mesquite, Nevada. Hey, Jillian.
That's right. Good morning, guys. You just mentioned the killer's past. Let's talk about his dad for a second and put up a picture of him on the screen. His dad was a bank robber. He was actually on the FBI's most wanted list back in the 60s and 70s. That's information that became known to us yesterday. So police are definitely going to be looking into his background, his family's background, his computer, everything that they're able to seize from the property. If we come back out live, I want to show you the house right here. This is where Stephen Paddock lived with his girlfriend, police say, and you can see the garage is boarded up. That's where SWAT had to make access into the house yesterday. But I realize it's dark, but I just want to point out at the corner there of the driveway, you can see a pile of what looks like kind of broken up, twisted metal. That was the garage door as of 2 days ago. So you can still see some debris out there left over from SWAT trying to gain access to the house. But the problem right now is we don't have a motive. Nobody really knows too much information about this man, other than the fact that he was a gambler, other than the fact that he lived in different locations, including Texas, including now Nevada, California, Florida. The neighbor to this side, they have a sign outside saying, basically, do not disturb us, that don't ring our doorbell, stay off our property, do not block our driveway. The neighbor right directly to this side has a long note posted on their door, and at the end of it, it says, we do not know him, which is very telling. A lot of people say they don't know much about this man, but his neighbors from Florida, when he lived there, spoke. Take a listen.
If I waved to him, he wouldn't wave back. He would not engage you in conversation.
He seemed like a normal senior citizen, he and Mary Lou, just like my husband and I. I mean, other than his line of work was professional gambling.
She was talking about his girlfriend who lived here in the house with him. Now, I do want to point out to you, we actually reached out to a local gun shop in this town yesterday called Guns and Guitars, and they sent us back the statement that they've been sending. You may have seen it, I'm not sure, but they're saying that he was a customer. He did purchase firearms from their store. They did all the necessary background checks, and everything was followed. They said he didn't really seem like he was out of the ordinary, so he seemed like a normal man, and that's what we're hearing, is he seems normal. So police are going to be out here again today investigating, trying to figure out what they can to see if he has any sort of digital footprint, guys.
Yeah, I mean, we do know that the investigators have picked up computers, which might be, according to one of the questions late last night, they asked a question, were there any laptops or computers found in the hotel? They looked at each other and said, we're still evaluating. So it looks like he had some type of social media or something going on in the hotel, let alone was in his myriad of houses. That's going to tell us a lot. Jillian, thank you.
Thank you, Jillian. You know, Steve and Brian, as we look at the images of the people who were killed yesterday, or the night before, actually, they all look so young.
It reminds me of 9/11 a little bit, because all these people in the middle of their work, at work, 25, 35, 45, they were just cut down when they shouldn't have been. These people at a country music concert, New Country, for the most part, over a course of 3 days, had no idea what fate awaited them. And here's some of the stories to share. For example, Steve, what about Sonny Melton?
Well, Sonny Melton, husband, loses his life by saving his wife and shielded her from the bullets. And keep in mind, you know, when you see the total number of people who have died, 59, that is such a big number. There are 59 stories, and as the names come out, we'd like to tell you folks as much as we know about the victims.
Yes, Steve, this family, this couple right here, they had just been married a year. They got married in 2016, so it might not have even been a year. He is a nurse, and she is an orthopedic surgeon, and they're from Tennessee. Yeah, she practices at a hospital in Paris, Tennessee. She was running, and he stood behind her, holding her waist. He was shot in the back, trying to shield her, knowing that the gunman was behind them. And so they were running away, and she said, he lost his life to save mine.
All right, another story is Mike McCurdy. He's an LA fire captain. He's a dad. He's got young children. He saved his sister-in-law, Jessie Preston, and after she was shot, he carried her back. And then he goes back again and helps some more people to get into safety.
Yeah, unbelievable. Then there's the Glendale firefighter, Mr. Steve Keys. He was shot while he was performing CPR on a woman at a concert venue. The good news is, Steve, he's expected to be okay. He's expected to live.
That's right. And then there's a Marine vet by the name of Taylor Winston and a friend, Jen Lewis, found unattended truck and used it to transport people to the hospital in 2 trips. They transported 24 people to Desert Springs Hospital Medical Center. You know, and there were so many vets and members of law enforcement in attendance yesterday. One of the stories that came out midday yesterday was about how a number of people's lives were saved because there were some people, vets, who had training. And what they did was, and it's a little on the gross side, but they actually stuck their fingers in the bullet holes to stop the bleeding. And that is apparently something you do in combat. And essentially, it was the same thing that they had come into contact with in that killing field behind me right here in downtown Las Vegas. One of those guys said, Steve, that he gave credit to the military. He said, I would not have known how to do that. In the military, we learned to go toward
toward all the action and the violence and what's happening to defend our country.
Yeah, they're used to hearing it. And you're referring to one of the stories, Mike Kronk. He braved the gunfire, used his shirt to stop the bleeding of his friend Ron, who was shot 3 times. By the way, they were there celebrating his 48th birthday, and he believes he was told by the EMTs his friend is going to be okay. But one of the 4 wounded did pass away, that Kronk did help. So this teacher kept going back and back and back. Yeah. All right, Steve, stay right there. 21 minutes before the top of the hour. Much more to come. We got to find out about the motivation, more on this guy, and also about the surviving stories, hopefully, with the 527 in the hospital.
Speaking of this guy, the killer wasn't even on the radar of law enforcement. How in the world is that possible, you might ask? Sheriff David Clark on that coming up.
Yep, and in Puerto Rico, well, it's in crisis after Hurricane Maria. The president heads there today. Geraldo Rivera has been there for at least a week. He's been on the ground. He will check in. Will he get that interview with the president today?
Now, back to the latest out of Las Vegas in just a moment, but first, some other headlines making news today. New York City is beefing up security, setting up extra counterterrorism units in tourist hotspots like Times Square. Officials say it's a precautionary move in the wake of what happened in Las Vegas. Other cities like Los Angeles and Chicago and Boston, they're also tightening up their security. And American spies were among the first and most severely affected by the audio attacks in Cuba. 21 U.S. diplomats falling victim, some reporting brain damage and hearing loss. President Trump is expected to reduce the Cuban embassy staff in Washington by 60%. And Equifax is now reporting an additional 2.5 million Americans might have been affected by that massive security breach, bringing the total to 145.5 million. Today, Equifax former CEO Richard Smith is going to be testifying in front of Congress.
All right, I've got Fox News alert now. President Trump heads back to the storm-battered island of Puerto Rico. They caused so much controversy over the weekend, with the mayor spouting off and the governor praising him.
Fox News correspondent at large Geraldo Rivera just rode with the Coast Guard as they were delivering much-needed supplies, and he joins us now from San Juan. That is so nice of you, Geraldo. I know you're from that area and have been there for about a week.
Ainsley and Brian, first of all, I haven't had a chance to give my heartfelt condolences to the victims in Las Vegas. It was just so horrifying what happened there, and so many people hurt so grievously, so many people killed. It's just staggering. And what we worried about here in Puerto Rico is that the president might be diverted from his planned trip here to go to Las Vegas. As we know now, he's coming here first to the great relief of the Puerto Rican people, I think, and then going on, as he should, to Las Vegas to give condolences and comfort to the victims of that massive crime. Here in Puerto Rico, the recovery is uneven. The devastation so broad, so extensive. Here in the famed Condado Strip in San Juan, it's still a mess. Most of these beautiful condos still have no power. Just 5% of the Puerto Rican people have electricity. About half have water, 1/3 have cell service. Many volunteers are picking up the slack, like this group in New York, National Guardsmen and others, reservists, who voluntarily got together their own aid shipment. Let's start there.
We're going to Cataño now. We came because we didn't think we had enough water. These are the donations that came from New York City, and we're going out today to take care of them.
As you said, the United States Coast Guard and other military and federal agencies are being part of this massive relief effort. I flew with the Coast Guard. Their commander is Captain Eric King.
The Coast Guard is trying to assist to get an assessment of what else is going on the island. So through our partners with the Puerto Rican government as well as the federal government, we're launching our units and assets to try and make assessments and gain better situational awareness to assist the overall relief effort.
The food and water they are bringing to the more remote villages like Utuado, very, very necessary. You can see this devastated landscape. This is a monumental disaster involving more people than any natural disaster probably in modern history. We arrived in Utuado, and the human chain was formed to get the food and water we had brought to the people in this needy area.
The problem in delivering aid, urgently needed aid, is the fact that Puerto Rico has a gigantic mountain range right in the middle of it. Many of the villages there are remote. They have not been reached in 9 days. That Coast Guard chopper is bringing urgently needed water and food to the village of Utuado.